This question comes from Evie. Evie, thank you for your question. So she listened to one of the most recent podcasts on emotional inflammation, and many of you had questions on emotional inflammation. So if you still have questions, go check out the Uncensored Empath podcast, because there is a whole episode. It's a Q&A episode, and part of it is really dissecting what emotional inflammation is, because again, so many of you are curious. So she says, I discussed emotional inflammation, but the way it was discussed was as if either you're doing it or you aren't. My question is, what does that look like when you're expressing your emotions and doing the work the best that you can, and that emotional inflammation still shows up within your body? I love this. This is such a good question, and it actually is a really good follow-up to that episode, and not something I necessarily covered on that episode. So, let's go big top level here. You are either doing it or not. So think of it like a switch within your brain, and more specifically the reptilian brain. If we talk about the theory of the three brains, one of the three brains is the reptilian brain, and it's all based on survival mode, protecting you, keeping you safe. So if you were told, or for any reason felt like it's not safe to express emotions, reptilian brain, survival mode, that is what triggers on. So it's like the switch is turned on. So if the switch is on in your brain, then we're creating more inflammation. If that switch is off, then we're more in either like a homeostasis or even anti-inflammatory mode within the body. So when we think of it at really broad level, either more inflammation is happening, is being created, or it's not. So in that sense, there is a black and white switch that's on or off. Is more inflammation being created at this moment, or are we releasing, or maybe we're just in more of again, homeostasis, or a stagnant place where it's not getting worse at least, but it's not necessarily getting better either. But again, Evie makes a really amazing point in the second part of her, really the heart of her question, right? So what if you are expressing your emotions, you're doing the work, and you're doing your freaking best at this work, at work that is not always sexy or easy. Two things that I want to bring up here. The first is that emotional inflammation may be from the past. So you are doing amazing work, and it's so important to honor yourself for that courage, that bravery to be feeling, especially if you're someone who has not felt for a very long time, or it always felt unsafe to feel things in your body. So if it's from the past or it's repressed stuff, maybe, and this is just the hypothesis, we have to dive into this for Evie more specifically, but maybe because you are feeling all your feelings and you are doing the work, the emotions that are coming in on a day-to-day basis, the new stuff, the present stuff, right here, right now, is not adding more emotional inflammation to your being. But now there's space for that old stuff to come up to the surface, and it can be released, it can be healed, it can be let go of. So you may still feel it, but it's not from today, or maybe even yesterday, or the stress about tomorrow, but instead it's old stuff that's coming to the surface. So the switch is off in a sense, where it's I'm not creating more inflammation in my body, but I still have this basket of inflammation that needs to be let go. And now my body's actually available to do that work. That's one scenario that could be happening. The other is just a consideration, a question to ask yourself, which is, you mentioned, what if I am expressing, what if I am feeling the emotions and not repressing them, not suppressing them and burying them, putting them down? Then I want you to consider how, more specifically, are you expressing them, or who are you expressing them to? And is that the way they want to be? If your emotion was right here in front of you, this ball of energy, and you named it, you gave the emotion a name, and you were then you talked to it and you asked it, how would you like to be expressed today? How would that emotion want to be expressed? And are you expressing it in a way that is honoring it, or the way that it would like to be expressed? Let's use an example here. So maybe my ball of emotion is anger. let's do sadness actually. Sadness, like a deep sadness. And I asked that ball of sadness how it wants to be expressed. And there's other ways to do this too if you feel weird talking to the emotion, but just as an example, just as a story, it might tell me that that deep sadness wants to be expressed to another person, let's say my husband. And in order for me to really feel that deep sadness on the level in which it wants to be felt, I need to be like held by him. I need to cry and like be held in his arms. And he doesn't know that, so I'm probably going to have to ask for it. But that is the way that this deep sadness is showing me it wants to be expressed. Whereas my inclination may have been to actually just go into the bathtub, draw myself a bath, put lots of salts in there, a couple drops of essential oil, and just cry until I couldn't cry anymore. And that would still feel like a very deep honoring of that deep sadness, of that emotion. But maybe that's not how it wanted to be felt or expressed. So it's not that that's bad, and it's not that that wouldn't help the actual release and process and express process as a whole. But if we don't ask it questions, sometimes we think we're doing exactly what we need, when in fact it needs to be expressed in a way that maybe we haven't tried before, maybe is a little bit more unfamiliar or uncomfortable, or we haven't thought of consciously. And so we have to get into our body to ask the questions in order to get the answers, because again, consciously, it's not going to be something that just floats into my mind, into my consciousness and stream of thoughts. Okay. So those are two scenarios in which you are doing the work, you are expressing your feelings, and it might still feel like there's emotional inflammation on the surface. So feel into that, see which one feels more accurate for you. And if neither, then that's okay as well. We can definitely follow back up on this and see if there's other layers. But I just want to end by saying, be gentle with yourself. Be gentle when you're in a healing process. Be gentle when there's big emotions coming up to the surface, because there are so many layers to healing. And as we draw back each of those layers, there's inevitably more to learn, more to discover, more to be curious about. So I'm always telling my clients, and especially the coaches that I train to be coaches, to be curious. Get really, really curious with the feelings that you are feeling and see what you might discover there as well. All right, Evie, lots of love to you.